Before getting into the tutorial, let me show you the end result. In this tutorial, we're creating a draggable game object. In my case, I used it for a level select menu, but you can use this for anything that you want to drag across your scene in Unity. You can drag horizontally or vertically using your mobile device, your mouse, etc. So if this looks like it could be helpful, let's get right into it. The first thing that you need to do is find or create the game object that you would like to move. In my case, I have a levels game object that has a bunch of children. So if I attach a script to the levels game object, I could then drag around the levels game object and in turn move all of its children to give the desired effect. So I'm going to select my game object, press add component, and type in the name of the script. I'll call mine level mover. Here we are in the code. In my case, I only need to keep track of the x and the y values. So I'm going to create a vector2 variable called clickOrigin. And this is where the user initially clicks the screen. Next, I'm going to create another vector2 variable called dragLocation. And this is where the user is dragged to. Lastly, I'm going to create another vector2, which is the curPosition. This is the current transform position of the game object. Later on, we'll be adjusting the speed at which we can drag. To manage that, I'm going to use a float with the horizontal speed and another float with the vertical speed. I'll set both of these to 0 to start, and I'm also going to use serialized field so I can edit them in the inspector. So now let's hop into the update method to see when the user is currently clicking on the screen. To check for that, if input.getMouseButton, and I'm going to check for 0. 0 is the default for a click or a touch or a stylus press on the screen. Inside of this if block, if clickOrigin is set to vector2.0. Vector2.0 is the default value. It's shorthand for writing 0, 0. And what we're doing here is checking if the user is just starting to click. So if the user presses and holds a screen and they just started to, then we're going to set the clickOrigin equal to wherever they clicked on the screen. We're also going to set the curPosition equal to the transform.position of our game object. So this only happens when the user first clicks on the screen. But we need to update the drag location as long as the user is currently clicking on the screen. So outside of this if statement, but inside of the getMouseButton if statement, we need to update the drag location to our current mouse position. So let me just copy and paste that, and then insert the logical not operator before our if statement. So when our user is currently not holding down their finger on the screen, we'll do this code. So when they let go, we'll set the clickOrigin back to the default, and we will also return to escape out of this update method to make sure we don't call any of our code below this if statement. Great, so that's all the logic we need for our variables, but now we need to update our game object's position using these values. To do that, I'm going to set the transform.position for our game object equal to a new vector2 value. So now we need to pass through an x and a y value for this vector2. The x value will be the current position, the x value for the current position, And we're going to add the difference between our click origin and our drag location's x value. To do that, we can have our click origin.x and subtract the drag location.x to get the difference. Lastly, we'll multiply this by the horizontal speed to just how quick you can move horizontally. We'll do the same exact thing for our y value, but we'll replace all of the x's for y's. And we'll replace the horizontal speed with the vertical speed. I'll use a semicolon to end this statement. So let's give this a try. Oh, I almost forgot. I set my default values as 0. I could set the horizontal speed to change that speed. I use negative as I think that makes the dragging go the correct direction, but if you prefer to go the other direction, you can make it positive. And then if you want it to go vertically, you can adjust that value as well. Once you figure out values you'd like, I'd recommend getting rid of serialized field and just setting the values. And that's it for this tutorial. There's some improvements that could be made. Maybe you want to only be able to scroll to the start and the end and not, way out of bounds. To do that, maybe you could set some boundaries and get your current position of your levels GameObject and make sure you don't pass the boundaries. Maybe you want to be able to do that dynamically when you don't know how many levels you'll have in your level select menu. There's a bunch of different scenarios that you could run into. In the game I'm creating, for example, I have a different amount of levels every time, and I just use some code so that I can only scroll to this far despite how many levels there are in my GameObject. So if that's something that sounds like it could be helpful, hit me up in the comments or let me know and I can create a video for it. Hope this was helpful and see you next time.